It's our Tuesday edition of the show, Frontier Opening Bell. Thank you for coming through. We'll look at the markets where the Nigerian Stock Exchange closed negative by 44 basis points on Monday, and the BRVM Stock Exchange was positive on Monday by 75 basis points. The Egyptian Stock Exchange was negative 0.87%, and the Nairobi Stock Exchange also sank a little by some 0.80%. That's for Monday. The Johannesburg Stock Exchange was positive some 0.93%, and that's an exchange that continues to receive some ETFs listing. We understand that they had the third listing this year. Recently, I think that was yesterday again. Well, on the show this morning, we've got Chima Okadike, a consumer goods analyst with Vetiver Capital Management. Thank you for coming through. And our executive editor here at Frontier Africa Reports, Bosin Omofaye. I appreciate your presence on the show this morning. Now let's look at the Eastern African headlines, where Car and General Insurance, the half year for 2021 got the revenue rising by about 30%, 29.5% specifically. Gross profit positive by 41%, and profit after tax positive as well, massive positive actually, 180%. Still with Kenya, where you've got Stanbic IBTC growing its profit by 26.7% to over 1.9 billion shillings for the first quarter of this year. Infraco firm TransCentury plans 2 billion new ordinary shares. Kenya Commercial Banks Group begins a major executive restructuring, something that some folks have been waiting for. In Rwanda, you've got King Faisal Hospital securing $14 million funding for expansion, and that's, we understand, is coming from the Eastern and Southern African Trade and Development Bank. Bosin, help us to understand these headlines from the eastern part of the continent.
Well, thank you, Temple. Very quickly, the King Faisal Hospital thing is that you say you do everything right, then you get investors coming through. And I'm beginning to look at what we're doing here. If I always use Nigeria as a reference point and how we can get best practices. So this peer-to-peer comparison sometimes, which we do on the show, is just to ensure that we all raise the game of good governance, socioeconomic development across the continent, as it were. So it's not about giving one country an egg on the face and try to praise the other one. No, that's not the whole idea. The peer-to-peer measurement is just very good for us to see best examples. If you set up a very good environment, look, investors will definitely come in from your neighbors, from everywhere. So you don't mind having the UCH Ibadan, University College Hospital of Ibadan, or LUTH in Lagos, or Ahmadu Bello University Teaching Hospital in Zaria, or the one in Maiduguri, for example, or the one in Abuja, that cannot attract investment from Saudi Arabia, from Kenya, from Namibia, from South Africa, from the ECOWAS Industrial Development, from AfDB. Now, the Nigerian Sovereign Investment Authority is doing so much on that part here, but look at what the Rwandans are able to do with the King Faisal Hospital. And I think that is good thing if they can attract investment outside their shores, not just into infrastructure or manufacturing or startups or fintech. We also need to attract investment into hospitals, Temple. We need it for our medical centers. We need healthcare. So every day we talk about fintech and fintech and fintech. They're so good, it's as good as they can get. We all need to stay healthy, okay? We need to reduce our maternal mortality rate in Africa. We need to give better life for women who are delivering babies and everybody else. We don't know when the next pandemic will come. Perhaps it's going to spring up from within the continent. Do we have the containment measures? Do we have research? Vaccines, do we have laboratories? Do we have all that it takes? So something as simple as a face mask that it takes almost zero to produce. Do we have the capabilities across board that we can hit the ground running? Can we supply the rest of Africa and the rest of the world? All of this matter to me. So I love the story about the fintech startups, whether it's a space tech or some guys doing it to switch, whatever. I love them. But however, we need to look at the bigger picture of the human family. What COVID-19 has taught us is that whatever fintech, whatever techy thing you're doing, look, human life comes first. Life comes first before anything else. So don't let us get ahead ourselves and thinking that with some digital thing, payment, whatever, We are there on the moon. We're humans after all. We are mortals. Let's get that straight. So we need to take care of that. 1.2 billion people, 60% of our population as youth. We need to think of what happens to these individuals moving forward. And for those of us who have crossed to the second half of the game, by the way, in terms of age. But more importantly, when you look at that's for folks like Chima and yourself, Temple, who are just getting started. Now, if you look at the earnings from car and general insurance, that was good business in Kenya. Stanbic Kenya reported the first quarter. I'm beginning to see the first quarter earnings, especially for banks in Kenya, looking a little bit better than full year 2020. Maybe just the Q1 first out of the pandemic, as it were, generally speaking, for the country. But I think it's getting a whole lot, a little bit better. I like the positive numbers I'm reading. TransCentury is this infrastructure firm listed on the Nairobi bourse. All they want to do is to try and get a lot more shares in and be able to get a whole more funding into and get more equity onto the on board. Is better than debt if you can do that. So get this new shares sold, bring in the money, expand infrastructure spending across the value chain in Kenya. That is good news as well. KCB executive restructuring is long overdue. They did the last one in 2011. 3 executives have departed. This Kenya Commercial Bank is one of the biggest banks in Kenya. Almost everybody has something to do with KCB, like Equity Bank, by the way, Cooperative Bank and Family Bank. So I think this is, again, leadership is a continuum. So when a bank do this seamlessly without so much rocking the boat, then it's good. I think it's good news. They have a history of bringing fresh hands on board, get good hands on board, move the institution further with the whole expansion and cross-border investment going on within the East Africa down to Central Africa. That is good news. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Bosun. Chima, would you like to draw any parallel between Stanbic IBTC Kenya and Stanbic IBTC Nigeria?
I think what we can see across East Africa, generally, the trend of the news that we can see today is that we're seeing positive news all around. You know, we're seeing positive changes, growth, especially when compared to last year when we were really hit by the pandemic. I agree largely with Bosun on his take concerning the health sector. You know, we can see Rwanda taking a very bold step and expanding their hospital, the King Faisal Hospital operation, which is something that we need so much, very much so in Nigeria. If you go to many Nigerian hospitals, we can see that the hospitals are understaffed, the staff are underpaid. You know, there are strikes here and there. When you even want to go to the hospital, most of the time you get suboptimal care, you know, and who is exactly to blame for all this? So I think it's something we need to really look into, try to get more funding for our hospitals, because the health of people is very instrumental in economic growth. You know, you can only have a working economy or an economy that can grow when you have healthy people working in it. So I think it's something that we need to look into. As for the parallel between Kenya, Stanbic Bank Kenya and Stanbic Nigeria, so I think Stanbic's performance in Q1 I don't think it was as positive as its Kenya counterpart. I think although it wasn't so bad, it's just when we compare it to its Q1 last year, it wasn't as great. And I think it was because it was one of the banks that had performed very impressively in the last quarter. So coming into this year, it then looks like it is having a bit of a problem, but mostly because it is coming from a higher base, as we can see. And much like this bank that we've seen a lot of other companies in Nigeria, consumer goods, industrial goods, post impressive results. And we know that one reason for this is the lower base that they're coming from the previous year. So I think it's very positive and a very good trend to watch out for. It's something that I think will continue going forward into the year, because we're getting into the Q2, which was the thick of when the pandemic happened last year. So I think they would have a very favorable base for growth in this quarter. So we should expect a Q2 of positive earnings largely all around.
Many thanks, Chim. Talking about the medical investments or healthcare financing, one particular person that has been driving that agenda in Nigeria that the government, I think, is yet to listen to is Dr. Ola Brown, and that's the lady in charge of flying doctors. I think it's high time Nigeria, actually, as you both said, it's high time we start looking at that area, seeing healthcare as actually an area of investment, somewhere you can put money and, of course, get some returns from, despite the charity aspect of it. Let's check out with the Nigerian and Western African headlines, where AfDB-EBRD signed an MoU on bridging Africa's $2.5 trillion development financing gap. You have Nigeria's inflation in a surprise dive, and of course, we've got the core index recording a higher number there. FMDQ lists FGN Road Sukuk Company 1 PLC, 162 billion naira Ijara Sukuk. That's on that platform. In Togo, you've got the diaspora remittances inflows dropping by 4% to 238 billion CFA franc. That's for the year 2020. Ghana's public debt rises to 78% of GDP in 2020, and in Senegal, consumer prices down by 1.8% in the first quarter of this year. Jim, I bet you would like to first look at the inflation story. You didn't see that coming, I'm sure, because your colleague yesterday actually expected something higher.
Yeah, I would agree with you. So it's a positive surprise for many people. I'm not sure I know any analyst that predicted otherwise, but we take positive news when we get it. So if we look at the inflation data for April, we would see that the driver surprisingly was not food inflation, which is why we saw that it was able to rise at a slower pace. So initially or previously, we've been seeing food has been driving the increased prices, and food is still very expensive. Many people cannot really afford to, splurge the way they could previously, or they have to cut some of their excesses. I was listening to a show, and they talked to some women, and those women mentioned that their families don't eat as much as they used to. They've had to find creative ways to ration, eating methods. Instead of eating with 2 pieces of meat, you now have one piece of meat that you've cut into smaller, pieces, so that everybody feels all right. So food inflation has always been driving the core inflation, but it's positive to see. It's nice to see that that has changed in April. I think one of the ways that happened was maybe due to the Ramadan fast. People weren't eating as much or having to purchase as much. Although I know that people still engage in free giving, in giving gifts to the less fortunate in that period. So, however, I think it may not have been a sort of balance to the drop in consumption I would have seen in that period. However, on the other hand, we saw that core inflation then went on the rise, even as food inflation was reducing. We see the rise in fuel prices, the rise in other core items, and I don't think it's something that will last considerably. The rise was not as significant as we've been seeing for food inflation, but going forward into May, we know that Ramadan period ended somewhat in May, so we still have that effect to look out for, the lowering effect to look out for. Apart from that, I think we may see a resurgence to normal food price levels and food demand. So that's my take for inflation.
You have any other comments on some of the other headlines?
Oh, yes, true. So I see the first headline on African Development Bank partnering or signing an MoU with EBRD to fund the financing gap in Africa. I think that is very noteworthy, and that is very positive, because coming from the pandemic, there has been a lot of cash needs. Everybody's trying to restructure, everybody's trying to come back into make platforms for economic growth. Many firms are in need of cash and financing. So in Nigeria, or in many parts of Africa, it's very hard to find the cash to fund your business or to fund your operations. when you find it, it's another thing to talk about the interest expense you have to pay on those costs. So although we don't know the exact arrangement that will be made, deals are not so very clear at this point. I think it's very encouraging to, especially African countries that have had to go through a lot in the pandemic here. It's very crucial to rebuilding and, re-energizing. So that's something that we can look out for. With respect to the rest of the news, I can see that Ghana's public debt 78% to 78% of its GDP. I think around October last year, the World Bank had predicted such a rise, and that was when it was around 68.3%. I think much like many other countries, everybody had to do what they needed to do. Revenues were falling short because of the pandemic. Expenses remained the same or even doubled, due to health needs and medical emergencies that came up during that time. So a lot of countries had to go into debt. So it's not exactly surprising that we can see that Ghana's public debt rose as much as that. However, I think what will be key is in terms of its financing, the terms of financing, if it is going to have to sustain a lot of costs in terms of financing this debt, and that's something that they really need to watch out for and maybe think of how to refinance such debts now that we're in a better position and can renegotiate, we're out of the woods and all that. Also, something else I see as last news is CP prices, consumer prices down to 1.8 in Q1 21 for Senegal, which I think is also very, good. It's always positive to see prices rising at these lower rates. Economies are always tasked with keeping inflation at minimal levels, so I think it's a very positive news for Senegal.
Thank you so very much, Chima, for all of these comments. Bosin, I know you know that Chima said it all, but you certainly will have one or two things to say.
No, not much about the Togo remittances down by, I think that's about 4%. Well, for last year, we all saw declines which varies from countries to countries and region to region. So I just hope that things will get a little bit better for them. Very good news about the AfDB and the EBRD, as you said, the European Bank for Reconstruction and Development. This is the first major handshake between the two to try and reduce Africa's development deficit about 3.2 or thereabout trillion US dollars. EBRD is in bed with Morocco, with Egypt, with Tunisia, Algeria, and the rest of them. So trying to do a whole lot more down the Sahel from North Africa to Sub-Saharan Africa, which you have Nigeria, the rest of us, is good news that I think the AfDB has been able to, and I think we should give it to Dr. Adesina for being able to help to attract all the DFIs that can get in this world to bring more money into Africa. We need to give a lot of thumbs up for his administration of handling affairs of the AfDB. And look at what they came up with yesterday with this new bank that they're planning for youth entrepreneurship development. This is going to be the first of its kind. And what's my take? Maybe countries like Nigeria can look at setting up a youth entrepreneurship development bank, fashioned after this AfDB. And we just contact Dr. Adesina and say, look, what are the frameworks? How can we do this? Imagine if we have a youth entrepreneurship development bank. Maybe we just add women to it, youth and women entrepreneurship development bank, that is specialized in focusing on women entrepreneurship and youth. We can all take a whole lot. So a lot of the initiatives that the government is doing for youth, you win, whatever it is, you can just take it straight to this development bank. And you can get funding from AfDB, from EBRD, from European Investment Bank, from the Asians and anywhere in the world. That will help reduce the unemployment we're talking about in Nigeria. The whole lot of fintech, whatever folks are doing, creativity, whatever that the bankers committee is trying to do under the central bank, just take it to this development bank for youths, okay? And we just resolve a whole lot of problem. That's one comment I have as far as this. So I thank AfDB for coming up with this Youth Entrepreneurship Development Bank in Africa. And I'm sure Nigerian youth will be among those who will be the frontliners to secure funding from this particular bank when it takes off.
Absolutely, absolutely. Couldn't agree more. Thanks a great deal, Bosun. South African headlines. Core shares Total World Stock ETF lists on JSE main board. South 32 Limited to complete SA Energy coal sale by June the 1st. Anglo American unveils cash tender offers 2 series US dollar, 1 series euro notes. Zimbabwean Central Bank Deputy Governor calls for improved ease of doing business. First Capital Bank first quarter net income surging by more than 268% to over 931 million Zimbabwean dollars. Bosun, let's quickly come to you with these headlines as we close to the end of the show.
For West Africa, for Southern Africa, the First Capital Bank of Zimbabwe, everyone is surprised how Zimbabwe is moving on these days. it's getting everybody's attention everywhere. So the deputy governor of the central bank more ease of doing business. Everybody's surprised. You see Bloomberg writing, you have the Africa Report magazine writing about how the Zimbabwean stock market has been moving, the support, and surprisingly, the corporate sector, the business sector, manufacturing sector is giving the new FX option that the central bank has put in place. They said it's good, but it's not perfect. I love that. I wish we can do that in Nigeria. I wish we can support what the central bank is doing, even though it's not a perfect system. And we all see it as work in progress. I think when you're down on all fours, Temple, you just have to go back inside with all the windows closed, as it were, to multilateral funding and all of that for Zimbabwe. I think they're just reaching inside themselves and try to re-engineer growth and moving forward. Look at the stock market. It's done nearly almost 80, not almost 100% so far this year. And for a bank like First Capital reporting about 268% in Q1 net income, let's say any Nigerian bank that will beat that in Q1.
Right, and thanks a great deal. Let's move on to the Northern African headlines, where Sudan gets some $1.5 billion France's bridge loan to clear IMF debt. Afreximbank is setting up new subsidiaries, fund for export development in Africa. That will be FEDA by way of acronym. That will be in Guinea as well. Qatar to launch $2 billion fund for infrastructure in sub-Saharan Africa. Actis UK plans to double energy investment in Egypt within the period of 5 years. Egypt's startup Bosta raises $6.7 million Series A funding, and Bank of Morocco commits to support fintech development in that region. Let's hear your thoughts first, Bosun, before we get to the final comments from Chima.
My thoughts will be around the various development finance. I'll speak very quickly, briefly to FEDA, and I like that the Fund for Export Development in Africa by Afreximbank. You see, we just need to look at how we can get things right. And I love the AfDB and Afreximbank, and I'll keep praising all of them, because putting this fund for export development in Guinea, if you look at the location of Guinea in terms of its proximity to Europe and to North America. So I have a reason, I have particular reason why this agency subsidiary of Afreximbank will be situated in Guinea, which is just at the curve of West Africa all the way. So if you're looking at shipping routes, whatsoever, that is good. If you can build Guinea there, as we built Ethiopia to the other corridor and we're trying to do Somalia and Eritrea to the other side, Temple, we're beginning to be strategic in terms of thinking. And I'm beginning to like the DFIs for this strategic thinking, strategic thoughts that they are putting together for setting up an agency that is driven. Now, what do we need to do? We need to now have railways or highways from Senegal, from Liberia, from Ghana, all the way down to Guinea, for example, and it can connect easily to North Africa as well through Mauritania. That is good thinking, and I love that as well. It can serve the whole region, Mali, Niger, for cotton, for other products, gold, that goes straight all the way through Guinea, and you can take it right out of the continent. Well done, job, Afreximbank.
Well done to Ben Orama.
Dr. Benedict Orama, yes.
Okay, thank you so much, Bosun. Any expectations, market forward guidance for investors today, Chima?
Yes, thank you. So over the past couple of sessions in the NSC, we've been seeing sort of mixed action from investors. There's no clear pattern as to where the market is leaning, and it cuts across all sectors. There's no particular sector that is, being bullish or bearish, but just seeing investors being investors, selling and buying as they can make profits and, bargain hunt. So what I think we would see going forward into this week. As we close out the week, we should just be mixed trading to continue in the pattern that local investors, because those are the investors that have been driving participation in the NSE. We've seen that foreign investors are really just kind of on the sidelines, with local investors taking the front and center position. So I expect them to continue in this manner, especially now that we've kind of fully gone past the Q1 results earnings stage, and as they just brace and try to see how companies will perform in the Q2 period. Although I should say that given that I'd already mentioned that I would expect positive performances from these companies in the Q2 period, we should expect some bargain hunting or position taking towards the end of the quarter but mostly towards the end of the quarter, as investors expect positive performance from these companies. And
let me quickly ask you about the stock Africa is made of, which begins today at noon. Anything to expect from that?
I think it would be very interesting. It would be nice to, I think I'd love to attend. It definitely bring up some insights into other African markets apart from Nigeria, and it'd be I think investors should look forward to it. Yes.
Thank you. Bosun, you have any expectations? 30 seconds for you.
Yeah, let's see the stuff we're made of. But I think one big news is the Finance Africa Summit, which is going on in Paris, which Sudan is just getting some there today. The big brother, the one paying for lunch is Emmanuel Macron, the French president. Nigerian president is there. Let's see what Nigeria comes back home with. I'm sorry, I'm going to keep coming back home to Nigeria. Every country is there. But don't forget, Nigeria is surrounded, landlocked by French-speaking economies. In the whole of West Africa, there are only about 2 English-speaking. 90% are in the pocket of the France. Yeah. If you go all the way up, all the way to Libya, Egypt, and Morocco, Algeria, Tunisia, you're kind of about French speaking. So those folks are coming down south to us. What do we have to present to them? What is our position? That is the story we'll be talking about moving forward.
Also, you really sound protectionist in this, but it's interesting. It's really interesting to know that. And of course, we've got our captains of industries attending the sessions as well. I know that.
Put something on the table. It's a negotiation thing. I know Chimait Kadike will agree. It's a negotiation thing. Look, you can come to my household, but it's on negotiating terms. What am I getting? What am I putting on? What am I putting on the table as the biggest market in Africa in terms of size and everything, resources and otherwise? So we should go there with a very strong negotiating point rather than just going there for the lunch.
I appreciate. True. Thank you so much. Thank you, lady and gentlemen, our first lady and gentlemen, Chimaka Dike, consumer goods analyst with Vertical Capital Management. I appreciate your analysis on the show this morning. Bosun Omofaye, executive editor. I appreciate your editorials as well. Thank you so much. Thanks a great deal. This has been the show for today. Temple Ashaji signing off. I'll see you next time. Bye for now.